most of the land, not all of it. And if you go back to, well, I don't think they said it in verse 1, but if you go back earlier in the book of Joshua, a couple of chapters back, you'll find he's old and well stricken with age. He says, I'm just about to die. So this is about the last, in fact, this is the last thing that Joshua did on this earth before he walked on to paradise. And Joshua, so he's about ready to die, and Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and called for the elders of Israel and for their heads and for their judges and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said unto all the people, so it wasn't just the officers and the important people, he gathered them right there close because they're leading the people, but all the people came around to see what's going on. He said, you bring them all. So he said to all the people, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachor, and they served other gods. And I took your father Abraham from the other side of the flood, and led him throughout all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his seed, and gave him Isaac. And I gave unto Isaac Jacob and Esau, and I gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it, but Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. I sent Moses also and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt, according to that which I did among them, and afterward I brought you out. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and ye came unto the sea, and the Egyptians pursued after your fathers with chariots and horsemen unto the Red Sea. And when they cried unto the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them, and covered them, and your eyes have seen what I have done in Egypt, and you dwelt in the wilderness a long season. And I brought you into the land of the Amorites, which dwelt on the other side Jordan, and they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand, that you might possess their land, and I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and warred against Israel, and sent and called Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. And I was talking about him earlier. But I would not hearken unto Balaam, therefore he blessed you still. So I delivered you out of his hand. And you went over Jordan and came unto Jericho, and the men of Jericho fought against you, the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Girgashites, the Hivites and the Jebusites. And I delivered them into your hand. And I sent the hornet before you, which drave them out from before you, even the two kings of the Amorites, but not with thy sword, nor with thy bow. And I have given you a land for which you did not labor, and cities which you built not, and you dwell in them. Of the vineyards and olive yards which you planted not, do you eat. And so God is having Joshua kind of give him a reminder, you know, because people forget and think, well, you know, it's pretty good over in Egypt. Well, yeah, but you forgot what really happened and all of the power of God that you saw when he brought you out of Egypt. Now, there were none of those adults left, by the way, because remember what happened in the wilderness, the 40 years, it was supposed to be an 11-day journey to Canaan. They went there and said, oh, they're like giants, and then Joshua and Caleb said, no, I mean, God, he can do that. And, oh, no, they went with the other 10, and they said, then they stood up and told God, they said, you just brought us out here to kill us and our children. You just want to kill our children. And God says, I'll tell you what, you're going to wander 40 years in the wilderness until your carcasses fall in the wilderness, the adults. He said, you accuse me, and I'm paraphrasing the story now. He said, you accuse me of bringing you out here to kill your children. You know what? I'm going to take your children in, but I'm going to let you die. You see how God will take and turn things back on us? And that's what he did. So these were children, many of them little tiny children that came out of Egypt. Now they're adults. And he's telling them, now you remember, when you were a little kid, I brought you out and I plagued the Egyptians. I parted the Red Sea. I drove out the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites and the Girgashites and all of them. And some of them, I just told the hornets, I said, go get them, man. And I've been hit by hornets. Bam, pew, boom, about 4 or 5 in the face one time. And I'll tell you what, have you ever been hit by a hornet? Mm-hmm. You know they're moving about 90 miles an hour when they hit you? And when that one hit me upside of the head, it felt like somebody took a club and went, doink! I mean, so pow! and boom, boom, about 4 or 5 of them in the forehead and the side of the face, and knocked me backwards off this log. I was setting chokers for a warehouse. And so, I'll tell you what, when God told the hornets, all of the hornets in that part of the world, He said, you go after them Amorites. I bet there wasn't much of a war. Them guys are too busy taking it. You ever try to stab a hornet with a spear? You ever try to kill a hornet with a sword? You ever try to put a shield up to protect you from the hornet? He just flies around and hits you in the back of the head. I mean, there was nothing. And He said, I didn't do it by your sword, and I didn't do it by your hand. He said, I sent the hornets that time. And so He's given them a history lesson of all of they saw all the power of God in the 10 plagues of Egypt. They saw all the power of God in the parting of the Red Sea and driving out people with just the hornets laying around. And then sometimes He did use the swords, and another time He told, march around the city and yell at them. Mm-hmm. I bet I could see some guy about as hard-headed as me going, break! Nothing happened, He says, because you didn't yell when I told you to. You got to do it my way, like He said. You know, we try to tell God how to work this out. No, He tells us what to do and gives us the ability to do it. And so He's given them this history lesson, bringing them up to speed, so they've got no excuse, because He's going to give them a very serious warning that I'm going to deliver to you tonight. And it is a very serious warning. And so He told them, He said, listen, here's all of this stuff that you saw me do, that you saw God do, and delivered them and all that. And then Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 to 27, same chapter. After the history lesson and reminding them of the power and protection and provision of God, now therefore, fear the Lord. You know, the New Bibles, a lot of time, they'll say, well, that means awe of the Lord. No, you know what? When my kids got out of line and I spanked them, they did not hold me in awe and respect. They feared the Board of Education that was going to be placed on the seat of understanding. I spanked my son one time, and when I got done, and there are times when I spanked my kids, I had to go in the other room because the tears were just, but it had to be done. And I told my son, the baby, Rainey, he's about 35 now. I told him one time, I spanked him, I said, I only do this because I love you. And he said, next time, don't love me so hard. And I had to go in the other room on that one, just, you know. So, we are to fear God. Why? Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Another place, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge is knowing how to do it. Wisdom is knowing how to use what you know. And when to use what you know, and when not to use what you know. So, fear is the beginning of knowledge, but then we start misusing knowledge, and we fear God's spanking. Because when He tells you, listen, I'm going to take you out behind the woodshed next time you do that, my God talks to me like my daddy used to talk to me. Why? Because He's my daddy. We call Him Abba, Father. And that's the Greek equivalent of daddy. And I fear His chastening hand. I fear God. Why? Well, because we're supposed to. It's not an awesome respect. Yeah, I have that too, but there are times I fear